Intersection Magazine Podcast.
Welcome to Intersection Magazine Podcast. This month, or for the next few episodes, I'll be doing something a bit simple, but I hope it will be beneficial. The idea is to give you guys some bits and pieces of wisdom. I believe it's wisdom that you might benefit from as you do your work or in your entrepreneurial journey. I'm not giving you this advice as someone who's made billions or who's on the top of Forbes list or anything of that nature, or who's made it to the cover of Time magazine, but just as someone who is trying to learn as much as possible through everyday challenges. So there will be just short clips with some basic story and an idea that has emerged from that story that might be beneficial to you. I hope you enjoy these. Thank you. I suppose it's useful to make it really clear at this point that I may be talking to others, but I'm really just talking to myself. The advice or the information you receive here has been useful to me, but it's not necessarily going to be useful to you. You know, when companies, organizations set up policies is really just your way of doing things. And I think a policy is a dynamic document. If you can't sit down and think that you've thought about all the possible things that could go wrong or could go right in your organization and then written a set of rules to help you navigate those situations should they come. And that's really sometimes what life is. You know, you have a relationship, it goes right or it goes wrong. You set up some rules to help you move forward with relationships after that. You get children, you educate them. Some go through in the right way, some go through and don't quite make it. You decide as a parent to have a set of rules that will govern how you live your life after that event. Well, naturally, before you get your children, you have a set of policies that you're thinking about, or maybe ideas or principles that you're going to live by, that are going to determine how you parent. And not all your ideas are going to be fruitful or going to be positive. And sometimes I think when we read or when we listen to motivational speakers talk about how they live their lives or how we should live our lives, we are tempted to think that the model that they're presenting is going to be useful to us. But really, we are also unique. You know, your car is your car. It came with a manual that's unique to that car. You as a person are unique too. Your experiences are unique. Your parents were unique. Your circumstances are unique. So it's actually impossible to have a policy or a set of manuals or a set of rules that matches between two individuals unless those two individuals are completely alike. For your manual to match the manual of another human being, you have to have lived the same lives, you have to be the same person, you have to have had the same experiences, you have to have, it's just completely impossible. The best we can do is just pick bits and pieces from one another of information that may be useful or that's universal. but going anything beyond that is actually not very useful. And that brings me to the third idea that I wanted to talk about, and that's the idea of reciprocity. So first, let me give you a story. In high school, a friend of mine once took me out to lunch. I'm not sure if I initiated the process or if he initiated the process, but after gouging myself silly of the meal, he said, "You owe me one." And I was taken aback because I thought, hey, free meal, free lunch. But if you've lived any amount of time in the present day, you know there are no free lunches. And that's what he was communicating. He was saying at some point in time, maybe across a table I'm going to need a meal myself, and so you better be ready to buy me that meal. And to be honest, that's just the way the world works. You scratch backs and yours get scratched too. It's a principle of reciprocity. If you subscribe to the Christian faith, there is a little bit of a difference in how I suppose the Messiah suggests that we deal with giving and the principle of reciprocity. In the Old Testament, there's a scripture that talks about cast your bread on the waters, and after many days it shall return. I believe students of the Bible think of this as wheat or seeds of wheat being thrown in water, and later on, after many seasons, producing a harvest of wheat. And it's the idea that you do not necessarily have to reap what you sow immediately, but that in seed form, if you give it time, that you will end up harvesting what you have sown. In the New Testament, or in the New Covenant, or in the teachings of the Messiah, the Christians believe that, and these are Jesus' words, that there are times when you will have to give and not expect anything in return. When you give something to your rich friends, they are obligated to give back to you, and some of these gifts are usually in public and with photo opportunities. And I'm not bashing these types of gifts, because sometimes people need to know that there are areas that need their attention. But giving with photo opportunities can be very deceptive, and the rewards that you receive after giving in public actually end in public. It's more risky if you give someone something in private. Jesus said that you would give something to someone in private if you give something with your left hand, that your right hand wouldn't even know that your left hand had given something to someone. I believe that in Turkey there was a tradition of leaving gifts for those who were poor in public places, but that were concealed, so that the people who were poor would not have to feel the shame of being given something, or of being in a position in which they could not afford to own something on their own. So I'm giving you two ways to approach this subject of giving. The worldly way, or the way most of us understand, is you give something and you expect something in return, or you owe people because you have given them something. And I'm afraid I subscribe At this point, I subscribe to the first part. The more challenging place, though, is when you give something and not expect anything in return. Give something to a stranger, just walk away. Give something to someone in the dark and just walk away. In a world in which we're trying to advance, world in which we're trying to rise in our careers, make meaningful impact, it's so tempting to do things in public, to go back to those who we gave and expect some kind of return. But that's not always possible. What I think we can do, though, after receiving gifts is we can create, or we can nurture a life of gratitude. Saying thank you helps, which is another story that you'll find in the life of the Messiah, when 10 people come expecting or wanting to be healed, and only one person comes back to say thank you. It's interesting that in that verse he says that the 9 were healed, but the one was made whole. He seems to be saying that there's a difference between healing and wholeness. And wholeness is a fruit of thankfulness. Anyhow, thank you for listening.